Hello, welcome to another live Q&A. Although you're watching this in the now, which will be past for me, my present now of talking. Same now though. So don't have any questions, I don't think, but I do have two subjects to speak about, that came up this week. So we'll just maybe start with a moment of stillness. I often hear Eckhart's voice in my head going, "Before starting any activity, begin with a moment of stillness." It's great practice. Just slowing down. Oh, yeah. This is really what it's all about, being still. I do a lot of talking, but it's all meant to help us get back to being still. So it's funny. I went into this talk with two ideas coming to mind and what to speak about. But as I was sitting here, another thought came in, another subject. So we'll start with this one. Just going with the spontaneous flow of presence, what presence wants to say. So I've been reading a book slowly, mindfully called The Moon in a Dewdrop, I believe is the name. And it's written by a teacher, Sensei Kazuaki Tanahashi, I think is how you say his name. And he's a Zen practitioner and teacher. And he did this translation on some teachings of Dogen, a non-dual teacher of back hundreds of years ago in the school of Zen. And I've really been enjoying these teachings. They are, as you can kind of imagine, wrapped in the Buddhist language and so on. But fundamentally underneath, it's very awakened. It's not, I wouldn't call it religious. And the section I'm in right now is, it's funny because when I first started reading it, I was like, oh Lord, this seems boring. It was going on about the rules of cooking. Like you can't use garlic because it's too strong of a scent, or there's all these like very specific rules. They have to bow a certain number of times to, during different preparations, and like you can't cook before midnight. Really interesting and somewhat strange rules to me. That a Zen master made hundreds of years ago, and now many of the Zen temples follow as best they can. But when I got toward the end of this chapter, it started making more sense to me why it was important. And it's because the way they describe it, there's so much care and attention and mindful practice, spiritual practice, as the center of cooking. And, cooking food for all the monks and all the visitors and so on. And cooking, very important. Everybody, has to cook. But the role is called tenshin. Tens. Wait. Tenshin, tensan. I'm sure I'm not saying it right. Something like that. Tenson or Sion. I'll have to get back to you on the spelling of these things. But so there's a particular very sacred role of being the kind of head cook, you might say, of a monastery. And what's interesting to me is that it's actually seen as equal to that of the head teacher. And a lot of monasteries underestimate the importance of a tenzin. Oh, tenzin. Tenzin. I think that's it, yeah. They underestimate it, and they don't realize that the way it framed it today is that the monastery cook basically all of their actions are Buddha actions. As in, like, people go to monasteries to find the deepest practice, right? And to go as deep as they can into their enlightenment. And basically what they're saying in this is that Tenzin, like, approaching the cooking practice with the highest quality of care and mindfulness and honoring of things and awareness of all these details and the enjoyment of the whole process. It's very like fine-tuned, kind of crafted, but all of that is of awakened nature. It's of like the deepest spiritual practice, and but it can be easily overlooked, because people want to read sutras and do the more like what you might think of as fancy stuff. But the elder monks actually kind of aspire to and sometimes inspire to be the Tenzin, the head cook, and live in the Buddha nature. Kind of quietly, just in the actions of the simple actions. And I just love that, because to me, that Eckhart reminds me of like what Eckhart calls a frequency holder. One who just brings a high quality of care and attention to whatever we're doing in the present moment. And this is our spiritual practice. So a little while ago, just a moment ago, I was doing some house cleaning, maintenance stuff, unclogging drains and changing water filters and all that jazz. And to try to do it all with a certain space of like peace and enjoyment, where instead of resistance or annoyance or also rushing, because I knew I had this talk coming, so I could feel the edge of rushing, but I didn't give in to that, or I didn't feed that feeling of, I need to hurry. Just take my time, got done what I could, ended up being done just in time. But so this very, what you might call mundane tasks of cleaning and so on, when done with high quality care and self-awareness and being aware of our internal state, which as Eckhart calls the state of our consciousness, when we're really caring for that inner space, we're making it into a spiritual practice. And so it's no longer just this monotonous, boring, mundane activity. It's actually sacred action, or you might even call it Buddha action, Buddha nature. Actions embodied through Buddha nature, awakened state, or simply put, presence, doing things in presence, which that in and of itself is lovely, but the experience of it too is very pleasant. And then I guess you could say the full expression of enlightenment really is just realizing that every moment and every action is worthy of practice, or is of sacred potential. And so it all this moment right now, which is really what life is. Life is just this moment, constantly kind of moving, but this moment, and is there freedom right now? Is there peace? Or is there what you might call non-freedom, which is suffering of some kind, resistance, irritation, anger, all this kind of sufferings. But yeah, so, and there's this saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And part of what that's hinting at is that before enlightenment, life is busy and we're doing all these things. And after enlightenment, nothing changes on the external. You're still busy. You still have the same job you had before being enlightened. You still have all the chores to do. You still have to eat and use the restroom and all these things of the human body. The difference is the experiencing of those activities, though, when you cross that threshold from the mundane to the sacred, is it all becomes more peaceful, more enjoyable, more. Yeah, sacred is a word I like. It feels right. It's like there's this sort of like a special, mysterious, powerful, unique attribute to the moment, no matter what form it is. And this is very powerful and liberating, transformative, because then, we can get out of that idea of like, oh, I don't want to peel the potatoes, or I don't want to do the dishes, or I don't want to do this, that, or the other. We get caught up in the resistance, and then we're suffering while we're doing them, or we're lost in our mind thinking about a million things and not being present in the washing of the dishes, or present in the vacuuming, or all the many things we do. On this note too, kind of like busy mind world, or not, I guess you could say form world. I recently have been super busy and making lists. I have lists upon lists, all these different lists, work ones and home maintenance stuff and car maintenance and all these different lists. But I'm bringing it up though because on the practical level, we as humans, there tends to be a lot to do. Now, granted, from my list, none of this stuff is like super duper important, emergency level or anything. If the list were to disappear, it'd be all right. It wouldn't be the end of the world. Things would still get done. But what I enjoy about the lists is that it helps me to carry less things in my mind, which is where the spiritual practice comes in. Because when I write it down, I know, okay, it's being accounted for, and now it's like I can let it go out of my head. I don't need to think about it again. And then I'm careful with the list. I make the list. There's a bit of a priority through it, and then I just do a couple things at a time. And this is actually an example of this delicate balance between doing, which is so much of the world that we live in, is doing, going, going, going. But then the other very important part, the opposite of doing, is being. Or you could say doing nothing. Just sitting. Some people maybe call it meditating. Even meditating can actually be conceptually felt as a doing, though, so it's not quite the essence of being if you're sitting and thinking, I'm doing a meditation. Let me start my watch. Boop. All right, now I'm meditating. And then the boop. Okay, now I'm done. Now I go back to my normal life. But yeah, being, right? Just being present. And yes, if you go really deep into being, it also means like shikantaza, just sitting, not doing anything. And when just sitting, it means not even thinking. Thinking is a form of doing. So let's do this for a moment of shikantaza. So, yes, it's very nice to just pause and just be present, become quiet, and the opposite of overactive. But the thing is, you can't only do that either. I mean, sometimes people can, depending on the situation. If you have everything taken care of, you've hired other people to do everything, and you can just sit on the couch and listen to the birds all day, great. But for most of us, it requires more doing. There's a balance between the two. And so in this doing, this is where like the lists come in, of being organized, of all the tasks in the form world. And it's one, I guess you could almost say it's kind of like that tenzin position. You're just meeting these tasks with the highest quality of care that you can, right? I maybe use the word effectiveness, or like it's gonna get done. Things will not be forgotten. There's a maturity or responsibility that strengthens, right? Where I don't forget to change the air filter 6 months later and it damages something. There's certain things that if you don't keep up with, it can be an issue. You don't keep up with your hygiene, your I don't know, doctor visits or something, that can be long-term a bigger issue than just going regularly, right? And so things do need to get done, Now, important part in this, so on one level, we're treating it with like a highest care and quality, but the other side of that is the kind of OCD, over compulsiveness, and the they might call it type A, uh, which type A's are often affiliated with or connected to the whole making lists and all that jazz. But this is where like the type B, the go with the flow, relaxed, everything will work out. That's true too, but what I really look for in so much of my life is balance. So many things come back to the middle way and balance. And so this is where I take a little bit from both sides. I take the wonderful gift of organizing and like making sure it gets done on time, and dating and prioritizing. This is that type A, very mind-based approach, which is a valuable tool up until a point. And then the other side is the surrender, the not rushing, and also there's a feeling of like none of it is that important. So it's important enough for me to write it down and to handle it as best I can, but it's not important enough to stress over. And an important key as well, from the state of presence, there's a feeling like everything is already done. Like, there's no like, oh, I got to get this list done. Back before I got into presence practice, I'd have all these lists, whether at work or just often in my head. I'd have all these things to do, and and it would be so tiresome and stressful. And then also this feeling of like, oh, I can't wait till I get all that stuff done. Then I can finally relax. And this is one of the big traps of the mind and of the ego, is future projection of, oh, the future is going to be so much better than the present once X, Y, or Z happens. So we're driving to the vacation, and we're so looking forward to getting to the vacation spot, but in the meantime, on the drive there, we're suffering impatience or anger or all kinds of maybe emotions bubbling up, so we're not enjoying the trip. And then we get to the vacation, and maybe we're happy to be there at that point, but we're already in a bad mood from not being in a good state of consciousness on the way there. A small example, but another one, I have a giant list of things to do, and that tempting feeling of like, oh, I gotta get this stuff done, and then how much can I get done? And especially in the West, we've been so conditioned to like maximize everything. Okay, here's my schedule, I've got time here, so I'll do this, and then okay, I can do that thing, and just we fill up every moment to be as like productive and maximizing as possible. Generally, we might be filling it up with more stuff that we just want to do, whatever it is, your hobbies or enjoyments or escapisms might be, or addictions even. But beyond all that, it's just looking at how can we find the right balance so that we do get stuff done, and there's a certain level of I guess you could call it responsibility, but without sacrificing our inner well-being, which means not stressing, not getting anxious, being really mindful to enjoy the present moment. Because the thing about lists, if you've ever done them, is you cross a bunch of stuff off and give it a day or a week or a month, and you'll have a whole new list again. Because the world of form, there's just so much to do. It's amazing. And there's a saying from a spiritual teacher about like cleaning your house, and it's like you can clean your house as spotlessly as you can, but by the time you finish that last corner of the room, the first room you began with is now dusty again. Because it takes time to clean everything, and by the time you get done cleaning one area and all that time went by, now this other area needs cleaning again. And so there's a really important lesson there in this balance between like not cleaning too much right? To where it's like you're just stressing about it or kind of compulsive about it. It makes you stressed out when things aren't a certain way, or you're fearing judgment of other people. What if they were to see this? You know, the classic thing of like, oh, family's coming over, everybody, let's clean. You know, what is that, right? Well, that quite often is the fact of like, oh, these people are going to be coming over that I care about their opinion, and what if they judge me for having a messy house? Yeah. And all of that's just mind stuff. If they're judging you, that's their mind to work with. It's not your problem. You just do your best. Now, the cleaning as well, it's like it's not about appearance, really. It's about cleanliness and uh, health, you might say, but not really about like, oh, what is so and so going to think kind of thing. But that's where a lot of the ego also hides. It's in that continual sort of like, oh, what's everybody going to think? I went over to my neighbor's house recently. She asked for help with something, and I had gone inside, and her house was really nice, clean, organized. And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry for the mess." And I looked at her like, "What mess? Have you seen my house?" I didn't see any mess. Maybe a couple of tissues on the table. I don't know. But it's interesting because I think it really hints at a bigger social illusion. Really, you know, we have this idea like it's immaculate or it's a mess, and that other people are gonna judge or think negatively. Um, I notice the same thing right now. There's a lot of pollen out, and to each their own. If you like to wash your car, go for it. But I find it kind of interesting and odd to. I am like, why bother washing the car? I can wash it today, and tomorrow it'll be yellow again. So why bother? But some people are every time they go out, they got to spray off their car, and it's like, why? What exactly are you worried about? Worried about what other people think, or you judge their, oh, look at their gross dirty car. Maybe, maybe not, but uh, interesting social kind of illusions that are common. Um, Going back to, yeah, this dance between getting things done but not being too busy. Now, what I'd say, with finding balance, we're all a bit different. And the whole know thyself is very valuable for looking at balance. It's not about what should everyone do. It's about looking at what do you do and where do you have room to adjust that balance. Are you more on the too controlling, too stressed about the getting everything done, as soon as possible, or pushing yourself to your max, not listening to your body when it needs to rest, all this kind of unhealthy, out of balance yang energy of get things done. Or the classic, going to work and you work way over the hours you're supposed to, and you lose your quality of life, but you're getting all the work done and you're getting promotions, but your quality of life is diminishing, or relationships are diminishing, because work is more important, as the world says. So that's one end of being too far on an extreme, and the other is not getting enough done. You might call it lazy, or yeah, just a certain threshold of like it's not really appropriate, because things are really. The more you put stuff down and avoid it, it's just still waiting there for you, and then it starts to really pile up. And so that's the other side. Not doing enough can really add to a giant mess of like, oh my gosh, I have more things than I even know where to begin, and it's overwhelming, and that's stressful. So there's in between where you do enough, and yet you're enjoying it. There isn't like a this has to get done kind of thing, and yet it still gets done. That's to me a real delicate balance on the practical level of bringing presence into our daily human experience. And again, depending on your situation, if you're retired, you probably already have a lot of this stuff dialed in, which is nice. And then on top of that, not having to work, has more free time. So there's situations, but we just work with whatever and keep. The thing with balances as well is it's not like you find the balance and you're done. the balance is an ever moving, and we have to continuously kind of be aware and adjust our stance, adjust here and adjust there, and we kind of reflect a month later or a year later, and we're like, oh, now I've gone a little too far on the it is what it is side. I need to get I need to kind of sit up a little bit and get a little more done. This has been true in my journey, falling back and forth between the two. And so yeah, balance, very important between the doing and the not doing. Okay, second subject is I had a very strong pain body arise the other day for the first time in a long time, probably years that I've had since I've had a pain body moment. So I'd like to share a bit about it and what I did. And obviously, you can probably tell now from my talking, it's gone. I don't feel it. Not that I'm ignoring or repressing it, but this is the beauty of when you can really be present and honor this pain whenever it shows up. It does get transmuted. It does get healed. And then you can carry on. You can go about the next days, and you're back into what you might call your enjoyable state of presence. So let's go into that a little. It started with a small argument with my partner. The argument itself wasn't anything particularly important. My partner got very triggered though, and part of conscious practice with relationships is to hold space for each other's triggers, which I do. Sometimes she loses it for a moment, so I'll just hold space. I don't react. I don't take her stuff personally, and so on. And then she calms down, and it's all good. I've forgiven, no real harm is done, and then we move on. She acknowledges and does her side of the work, and that's that. Interestingly, though, this time she found a button, a very sensitive button. She said something very intense, and it really woke up a deep story in me from my past. And at first she said it, and it didn't really hit me, but I did respond back with some kind of defensiveness. And then it kind of sank in, and I realized what she was saying, and then I was like, oh, and it opened up this huge wound that I had from my past that I felt like for the most part it's been healed. But you never really know. If a wound ever comes back, you just have to work with it. If it's been absent for a long time, great, you enjoy its absence. But if it shows back up, then it's okay. This is in present moment. I thought this was gone, but apparently not. Right? That's kind of how it goes. And so then, okay. And so, she said this thing. Later, she realized what she said was really out of line, and she apologized, and that was fine. But what it woke up in me was still really important for me to look at, because really, what happened with me and her, it was like that was on the surface, right? The wound that brought it up to my awareness, though, was much deeper than the surface situation. And so I could see that, and a lot of pain in my past. It was just kind of, I remember describing it as like this giant reservoir of water, and deep in the earth. That's kind of how it felt, and it was scary, and there was deep sadness and all this really heavy emotion. And so, I felt like, well, for a long time now, I've been feeling very peaceful. There isn't that. It's not that I'm avoiding it. It's not in my awareness. But now suddenly it is, and so okay, this is here. And so I took a whole day of being really quiet. I told her I need some space. I needed to just really, I guess you could say, go within. And I noticed, being present with that pain, there was just a really strong pull to be extra still. I put down all my to-do lists and all that stuff, and for a long time of that throughout the day, I just sat, kind of blankly staring at the screen or the wall or whatever, and more so just really being present with the feelings, with that the intensity that was awakening and stirring. in that, what I kind of call honoring the suffering, right? So suffering was there. It's like, oh, this big story and all this pain. And it, you're not avoiding or suppressing if you're willing to just sit and look at it. So, right? That's right. Okay, let's look at it. And being present with it, letting myself feel whatever, was coming up, different thoughts that could connect to it. I also caught, though, that the mind would occasionally run to random thoughts that kind of reflected that pain, but it was almost like the mind was using that pain as an excuse to make up this whole random story. Was what happened. And I'd catch that and go, no, this is not related. This deep reservoir pain I'm feeling has nothing to do with the guy at Taco Bell or whatever. I don't know. It goes much deeper into my human past. And so that was important too, to catch those. It's almost like they're like little fragments that try to like jump in and steal the show. And catch those and no, that's not it. And then just go back to the feeling. There was times that a friend of mine happened to send me this song, so I listened to a song, and it was really beautiful and powerful, and I cried a bit. And there were a couple other times that I cried too. Some of it, the crying, I felt like the processing of that emotion. Some of it was, I'd say, maybe all of it was processing, just different moments of processing it. And so when I felt that, I just to let myself feel that completely, release it. And another really important key in honoring that suffering that was showing up in that past story was not to rush healing it. I now have a fair number of years of spiritual study and teaching, and conceptually I know a lot of the right answers, of what to do with this and that and the other. And it could be tempting to use the mind to like try to, okay, let me cut through this as quickly as possible. And because the mind and the ego doesn't want to be present with suffering. The suffering is the result of the mind and the ego anyway, but doesn't want to be present with it. But presence can handle it. Presence can handle any level of suffering. Presence is very powerful. And so it's also, actually what it does is when we do come across a deep reservoir of our own past pain, it, in a way, it demands a deeper level of our presence to be able to be with it. So in that sense, you could say it's deepening the awakening as well, because it kind of requires an even stronger presence to be able to sit with that pain without getting lost in it, or without the mind carrying us off into other directions. But yeah, so this went about for the day. There were lots of what I might call heavy moments where I would just sit and really feel the feelings and the various little stories that would pop up and whatever. There were other moments where I just listened to music and kind of feel my way through that. And at the end of the night, I even just played some video games. You could say maybe took a break from the processing, because I have found that, again, when it comes to balance, there's a degree of like sitting with the pain body, calling out the ego and so on. And then there's also time to just like relax, have fun, go do something you enjoy doing, a hobby, reading or whatever, watch a movie. Nothing in excess, right, as the Greek wisdom says. And that even goes true for like the deep spiritual work of healing our wounds. You don't want to do that in overdrive of like, I want to be enlightened, so I'm just going to sit with it all for 8 hours a day until I'm finally enlightened. That will more than likely backfire. It's a little too much, too aggressive, too striving. So another balance between, honoring, doing the work, not giving into escapism too early, but then when we feel a certain like, okay, that was a good bit today. Just like with to-do lists, you feel like, okay, that's enough for the day. I did a couple things. All right, that's good. And then you give yourself permission to just have fun, enjoy the form world, do the fun things, and up into a degree. But Yeah, in that process, there it took a couple of days. The first day was certainly the heaviest. The next day was the kind of long processing day, and then the day after that, oh, I guess would be today, which today's been pretty normal. so, uh, so I guess it was about 2 days. Now, important thing, when I listen in right now, I can feel this certain. It's hard to describe. It actually doesn't feel heavy right now, but it feels deep. And to just to also, it's just that we're always aware and we're always honoring whatever is present. So, okay, 2 days have passed. I'm feeling, I might say, back to my normal. But that doesn't mean that, like, I forget about what just happened, you know? I mean, granted, I'm talking about it right now, but there's sort of an ever vigilance and an ever honesty and an awareness. Maybe it'll come back in 10 seconds. I don't know. But if it does, it's just okay. Then I'll just do the same process. I'll just honor it again. It's not a problem. And being able to approach our sufferings with that kind of immediate response of, like, okay, no problem, makes such a big difference. Because normally when we have deep pains that we've spent a lifetime running away from, the moment they kind of come back to our attention, we do anything and everything we can to avoid. And something in us says, no, 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 no. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to feel that. And whereas when you really trust that presence, your connection to presence can handle it, not only handle it, but will heal it and take your practice and your liberation even deeper, then it's like a wonderful thing. It's hard to remember that when you're in the midst of a pain moment, though, but very powerful when you get through it. So yeah, so now it's clear. Okay, if it comes back, then I'll honor it again, and if it doesn't come back, then okay, that's good too. What else? So we have the busyness balancing. Oh, the Tenzin, cooking mindfully, and the experience of the suffering. It's yesterday when I was sitting with a lot of that heaviness, I did have an interesting thought about ancestors and how us as humans, right? We've been going on for thousands of years. I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years. I don't know how long. Humans have been on a planet for a long time. And if we are living, it means we are descendants of others who lived, quite obviously. And which means, but also others that died, certainly, and also went through all kinds of trials and tribulations. And if you look in human history, I mean, it was not easy. The farther back you look, it seems like the harder it was. I mean, not even having just like nice clean water to drink easily, or hot showers, or refrigeration, or air conditioning and heat, or the ability to travel, medicine. I mean, they were drilling holes in people's foreheads in the 60s, thinking it was cure mental issues. What's that term called? I forgot what it is, but crazy. Even back in 1960s, the medicine was still caveman-like to sometimes. So the advancement of medicine and so on. Yeah, it's not easy being human. And so I was thinking about this in the sense of like how much suffering is passed down through generations, and um, and all of the humans, the parents, the children, not knowing how to handle it, what to do with it, and then it just, if when you don't know how to skillfully work with our sufferings, then we end up creating suffering for others. The other day, when I experienced this big suffering of my past, if I had not been careful about really settling in, not blaming the external world, but looking at this deeper aspect of the pain and doing that inner work, if I had not done that, it would have most definitely turned into some kind of violent outward exchange or release. Maybe through cussing, yelling, raising my voice, name calling, or, sometimes people go as far as physical violence, or, do all kinds of crazy stuff out in the world. And this, in many ways, is just because they don't know how to transmute that suffering energy, and so they just end up throwing it. Like, no, I don't want the hot potato, No, you take it. Yeah, that kind of thing. And in that view as well, you can actually see forgiveness, because it's like nothing is really personal, because everyone's unconscious action is just a reflection of what they're not able to process themselves, and then are then passing down to someone else, whether it's on the road or in the family or wherever. But then, so yeah, you look back in human history, and there's so much crazy stuff: wars, just people killing each other, millions of people, and famines, and the Great Depression in the States. But I mean, countries have probably had all kinds of different stuff like that. Just starvation, or it was very common for babies to die back in the day, and mothers to die giving birth, because it was just much, more primitive health system type of stuff. So all these traumas, right? All these things that would need to be grieving. And on top of it, though, there's even more of like a demand for survival, where you just gotta like do what you gotta do to hunt or farm to get food. And right, the more you look back at the details, the more like complex. Well, maybe complex isn't the right word, but certainly challenging and painful, and it would require a certain toughness, fierceness, just to survive. And so it's like from that mentality, it's like no wonder, our parents were not the most emotionally aware, and gentle or empathetic, because when you grow up in a really rough situations and environments, it creates that rough kind of character, personality to get through it, to survive it. And so in some ways, it's like the unconsciousness is just that like beaten up form world survivor. This just does whatever it can to get to survive, to continue on the species or the lineage or whatever. And it from that view, you can almost kind of have compassion for the more desperate attempts that the form world personalities can take to survive, like greed, or just deep on creating suffering for others in such tremendous ways. I was looking at this as well, because this big reservoir of pain that I had came from one person in particular's very deep unconsciousness that I had to deal with. And years later, I can see it was my crucifixion. Eckhart says, like, we all go through our own crucifixions. And it was tremendously humbling. And a funny thing, too, though, before that, I had a big ego. So you could also argue that my big ego is what attracted this very humbling energy of a person. So nothing was out of place in that sense. I needed what I needed. And now I'm even grateful because of how deep it took me into my current experience and my spiritual experience of a lot of freedom and peace. So it's kind of ironic, right? You walk through hell to get to heaven. Um, but I also, part of that was just reflecting on the fact of like this particular person's unconscious energy that I was so challenged by wasn't just their energy. It's really the energy of humanity on some degree. And actually, it's not even the worst. Even though this person's energy is pretty strong on consciousness and ego, it gets worse than that. There's other egos far more insane. Um, so I'm glad I didn't have anything crazier. But yeah. Oh, and so with that though, it's almost like the person. The temptation is to misidentify that person with all that past, with all those actions. But really, it's more like it's that collective energy and the unconsciousness, the ego, that is just taking this shape or has kind of consumed the host of that as that person, because the person is consciousness, and but it's like this big weight of humanity's past carries through each lineage of humans, and we have a lot of healing to do for one. And that's also why it's like no wonder people can be so crazy. There's so much to be healed. Healing is also one way I came to realize is synonymous with awakening. Awakening, healing, same thing. And so, when we are each doing our own part to heal whatever's showing up in us, that's our way of helping kind of clean up the world, heal the world. And I do feel it is much more effective than we realize, just cleaning up, healing our own stuff whenever it shows up. I also had the feeling like that reservoir of pain that I mentioned. On one level, it was just my stuff of the past. There was another point though where I kind of felt like it also represented just the suffering of all beings. Humans, but not just humans, animals, all forms of consciousness to different degrees. So we honor the suffering whenever it shows up, but then when we do that and things heal or things move, and then we feel peaceful again, then we enjoy the peace. You hold that in frequency, and that's really important as well. I've heard people say that they feel kind of guilty being free from suffering when they see others suffering, which is interesting. An important thing to look at. One of the aspects for me is that if I really wish for them to be free of suffering, I have to show them that it's possible. And if I'm suffering because they're suffering, then no one's free. You know, the only chance for them to find freedom is for me to find freedom, which means not suffering with them. You can still have compassion, you can still care, you can still try to help, but without attachment to the results. If they don't receive it, okay. And the other aspect of this is just understanding the spiritual quality of suffering. Suffering isn't just a big bad wolf, the bad guy in the plot. It can seem that way, but when presence is brought to it, it's very powerful, and it's humbling. it, one of the ways that we, when we're looking for freedom, what are we looking for freedom from? We're looking to be free from our ego and the ego mind. And the ego mind is quite the opposite of humble. And so suffering quite often opens up, forces a certain space of humility. And that's part of what I would have described the other day. I felt broken. This feeling of like broken, like done kind of feeling. And just resting in that, actually. Like, it's okay to be, well, to be broken, I guess, one word, but, the saying, it's okay to not be okay. But then also, there's just so much power in humility that when we feel it, it almost, sometimes it can feel like a punishment when you're being humbled. But if you can find yourself in that humility, it's not a punishment, actually. Because it's a really sweet spot place to be, is the humility, to be in the humility, to stay humble. And I have found that if I do not stay humble, life will be sure to humble me right back. This is kind of funny at this point, but I mean it. I'm being very serious. Important to stay humble. On the subject of humility, I heard Eckhart say, one has to have a certain humility to not be too attached to your plans, right? Because we have an idea of how we would like things to go, to turn out, and maybe it will. Quite often it will not. We have an idea of how we'd like things to go, and it does something different. And there's a humility in being able to surrender and adapt and just go with what is happening, rather than saying, no, that wasn't supposed to happen. What I had in mind was supposed to happen. How I imagined the vacation was how it was supposed to go, or how I imagined that person should be acting is how they should be acting. But they're acting the way they are acting. So it's interesting that different perspective, though, of also bringing in humility into that. Like, that requires a humility to be able, the classic saying, thy will be done. Thy will, not my will. It's where a lot of our suffering happens, too. We get all caught up in my will, how I want things to be. And then it's not matching that. Oh, suffering. So it's okay to have your ideas with manifesting, putting things out there, preferences. You can do that, but you do it lightly, with the humility of saying, here's some ideas, universe, but you do you. I'll do whatever you decide. and then then you just follow what happens next. Follow the path. But if you go, things go a certain direction and you're like, no, and then that's basically the essence of suffering, when we say no to what is, when we impose our will upon what's happening. Okay, this feels complete. Thank you for listening. Hope you found something helpful in this share to take with you throughout the week. And see you next time.